So the BBC encouraging it to, in addition to that, by the way, there's this. The BBC is now encouraging its staff to include their preferred pronouns in their email signatures as part of a drive to make transgender and non-binary colleagues feel more welcome. The advice, which was posted on the BBC intranet, applies to all of the corporation's employees, whether they define as male, female or non-binary. The guidance states that adding pronouns at the bottom of emails is a small, proactive step that we can all take to help create a more inclusive workplace. Many trans and non-binary people have started introducing themselves with their preferred pronouns, including they and them, so people know how they wish to be addressed. Let's speak with Benjamin Butterworth, who's the late editor of the I newspaper. When I say the late editor, he's still alive, by the way. He's with us now. So I couldn't resist it, Benjamin. Nice to have you with us. LGBT activist as well. Can I just start with this, Benjamin? Because here's the bit I don't get. If you are a trans female, then invariably you like to be referred to as a woman, and if you're a trans male, as a man. Who does this pronoun debate really apply to?
I mean, I think the point is more about the sense that sometimes people might make wrong assumptions about what your gender is. They might, for example, on an email, get your name wrong, but also you get people who are non-binary. And so that means that rather than the binary of people that are male or female, be that trans or not trans, obviously in most cases, they identify as something else. And so the idea is that this makes it clear to people. Some people like to be identified as they, them. And I think what the BBC suggested is a good idea because it simply fosters a healthier work environment for the people it affects.
Does anybody, I mean, in 20 years, I met one person who asked to identify as they or them, and over a beer, and I can say she told us that she just did it for because everybody seemed to be doing it, and wasn't actually that bothered. Now I know that's an anecdote, and that doesn't define the entire world of people's pronoun preferences, but I took from that this whole debate is largely bonkers.
It's not bonkers. I think what it is new and strange and unusual to quite a lot of people. So people that are non-binary will go for they, them. And most famous example is Sam Smith, the singer, who prefers to be they.
He was making it up, wasn't he, Benjamin? Come on.
No, I think it's how he absolutely identifies.
Do you think so?
No, I made the mistake. It's how Sam Smith absolutely identifies. But the thing is, a lot of people, when they think this is bonkers, it's because they've never heard that people are like this before. Because the truth is, much like being gay or lesbian 30 years ago or 40 years ago, this seems unusual because people haven't heard from people speaking out before. But it doesn't mean that people haven't always identified in these ways. Gender is a construct. It's something that we use to understand each other as well as what's between each other's legs as terms of sex. And I think we're coming to be better understanding each other as human beings. And that's what they, them represents.
But we are changing the English language to accommodate a sort of an unproven part of the gender debate. And I say unproven, not mischievously, but if you talk to clinicians and gender experts, they will very much tell you the jury is still out on all of this.
But the jury isn't out on people who explain to the rest of the world how they identify and how they want to be referred to. And, I think any gender expert, it's a slightly odd title, but any gender expert would say that you should listen to people when they're explaining who they are. Because what we absolutely know is that trans people, whether they're going from male to female or identifying as something else, are significantly, disproportionately likely to have mental health issues and to want to take their own life. 50% have actually tried to do that. And so when we look at people who are identifying in these ways and the hell that they have been through in some cases, whether from abuse that they give themselves or from their family or from the media, it's horrendous.
I get that. And we've spent the last few weeks having programs trying to address those very points, Benjamin, and I understand that. But most, as I said at the beginning, I've not met a trans woman who doesn't want to be referred to as a woman or a trans man as a man. So this whole pronoun thing doesn't apply there.
But, I've not met most people from most countries in the world, I suspect, but that doesn't mean that those countries don't exist. Just because you haven't met someone, just because you can't yet put a face or a name to it, doesn't mean that these people don't exist and don't want to try and explain themselves. And I think that's the exact point of what the BBC has done to ask people to put this in emails, because it says, you might be making assumptions about someone because you've never met or put a face to them, but here you are, here's what they want to be referred to. It might be they or them. And here's a way to stop that being a problem by putting it in the email signature.
To be really cynical about this then, Benjamin, let me just put my ultra cynical hat on, that this whole non-binary thing is kind of a sort of largely invented area of the conversation. You gain yourself some oppression points. When you're at university, you used to be a goth, now you can be non-binary. It puts you in a category, it gives you a minority status, it allows you some kind of prominence within on campus. And it's really nothing more than that. And if you come back to those people 5 or 6 years' time, the non-binary people have discovered they were actually a boy or a girl after all. True or false?
No, absolutely not. It was a bit like saying that bisexual people don't exist, really. But the truth is, if this was something like that, then why would there be people that identify this way? That actually, hundreds of years through history, you can find people who have identified in this way. People in different countries, in different cultures, all around the world say, actually, this doesn't fit me, whether I'm a man or a woman.
But if I don't,
something else.
But I mean, I do get that. If I don't feel particularly masculine, and I can't also say I feel feminine. And I'm not kind of blokey and I'm not girly. I'm being sort of basic with the terminology here. I mean, I'm still a bloke, aren't I? That doesn't make me, I don't need a title for that.
Do you know what's hard to explain? Is because people's gender identity, which for 99% of people is exactly as you'd expect it. They're born with man parts and they're a man, right? It's very hard to explain to people like that how deeply felt these issues can be, just like sexuality. A lot of people who are straight men often find it hard to imagine someone being fancy another man because it's so fundamentally a part of them. I'm a gay man, for example. My pronouns are he, him. Now, I'm sort of slightly camp, but that doesn't make me non-binary or transgender. That's different to something that is felt so fundamentally. And what I'd say to people, I suspect lots of people who agree with you right now, is how much damage does it do you simply to respect that person asking to be referred to this way? Because I don't think it does, but it might do the world of good to people trying to explain themselves.
But has it been, I suppose my contention, I get everything you're saying, by the way. My mate Al, who's as camp as Christmas, I mean, believe me, he would out-camp you every day of the week, Benjamin. And he's a straight bloke, and he has that conversation probably 3 times a week because people assume he's not for some reason. So, I understand there were nuances, and we all know that, and we've thankfully all advanced to know that the human condition in all its various forms is probably more beautiful for all of our differences than anything else. But I just on this point, I wonder whether this has become, we've kind of imposed a vogue almost in our language onto something that simply didn't need one.
But you know what? I think we're doing the opposite of imposing this, because there is so much pushback from so many different areas. I did a debate about this very issue on Good Morning Britain last year with Piers Morgan. It became the second most complained about TV moment.
This is Penguin territory, right? Penguin Gate.
Yeah. So the idea that something like that can get such pushback, think about those people in their day-to-day lives, non-binary people. This isn't an easy thing to share with the world. It's a really tough thing.
Can you define it for us, Benjamin? Can you define specifically? I mean, I sort of, in slightly clumsy terms, maybe said what I thought non-binary was. What's the official definition of someone who's non-binary?
It is slightly straightforwardly. It's someone that doesn't identify as male or female. So they might identify as other genders, which they would explain. And I think we just have to respect people for who they are. I honestly find it odd that people get so angry about this. Why is it so difficult to let other people live their lives, is what I always say.
But it's quite clumsy, isn't it, to have to, we played a clip of a trans man talking about how to remember putting all these different pronouns into your phone and then just looking them up every time you... I mean, I think that the mood music seems to be, we just don't really need it, because most non-binary people wouldn't, frankly, give a toss if somebody called them a bloke if they're biologically a bloke.
Do I think that, in a way, that's a reasonable point to say that, people that are identifying like this, or maybe in the middle of transitioning, and that's one of the reasons why it's confusing. They're not some kind of unreasonable mob, unlike the rest of us. If you get it wrong, and I got it wrong about Sam Smith a few minutes ago in this interview, people are perfectly reasonable. What they're asking for is to be respected if they tell you that they are they. Okay, and I think that sounds like a good thing. I was brought up by my grandparents to have good old-fashioned English manners, and I think this is just a modern example of that.
Benjamin, great to have you on, sir. Thank you. Benjamin Butterworth, late editor of the newspaper, LGBT activist. The Sam Smith thing, I mean, I wasn't trying to be offensive to Sam Smith, by the way. I just kind of assumed that was maybe I'm just very cynical about the music and entertainment industry, where you think, oh, well, somebody will jump on that, and, is Jessie J, what sexuality is Jessie? I thought she was gay. No, she's straight now. Is she bi? I don't know. I thought it was kind of a little bit in that ballpark, the Sam Smith thing. I just assumed Sam Smith was a gay man who was a little effeminate, I think, in his own words. Does that make him non-binary? Does that mean that if you have the term non-binary, do you apply? Does that within the term have a spectrum, if you like? Are there other genders to explore within that spectrum? And I don't know about the whole language thing. I mean, if you misgender someone, that would be under that category, wouldn't it? If you got it wrong. If I were to talk about Sam Smith, he's a great singer. What have I committed heresy there or something? Is that the worst thing in the world? I meant to say they are a great singer. Okay. No, it doesn't cost me anything to do that. I wonder why I'm doing it. And there's a little part of my brain that's thinking, am I kind of buying into a contemporary kind of social justice warrior game here? Or am I genuinely addressing something that needs concerning? If it's the latter, sign me up every time. Why do I want to offend anybody? Why would I do that? I just don't know how I'd remember it all, or how anybody else would, for that matter. I remember speaking to a student who rang our show once, and he said that in his year, something like 45% of students had declared themselves non-binary. Statistically impossible. But in his words, it was a bit of a thing, and it brought some oppression points to some of those. They couldn't pretend they were black or gay or any other minority, but non-binary took them where they needed to be politically, and that was within a group that they could claim a certain level of oppression. I know that's hyper-cynical, and again, it's anecdotal. Don't take that as read, kids. I throw that out there because that argument is very much out there at the moment. Which one is it? And if you are non-binary, do you give a hoot whether you're referred to as him, her, they, or them?